The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 49 different species sat together in the Great Chamber on the planet Verith, making decisions that affected billions of lives across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They were proud of what they had built. They believed they understood how civilizations should grow and behave. They believed they knew everything. They were wrong. When human ships first appeared at the edge of Council space in the year 2247, the Council sent Ambassador Koroth Vex to study them. He spent 3 years living among humans, watching them, trying to understand them. What he reported back to the Council made them very uncomfortable. Humans were strange. They fought wars against each other while sending food and medicine to their enemies at the same time. They created paintings and music and stories that served no practical purpose. They laughed when they should have been afraid. They cried over things that were not even real. Their bodies were weak and their lives were short, lasting less than a century, yet they acted as if they had forever. But what scared the Council most was how fast humans learned. Other species took thousands of years to discover faster-than-light travel. Humans had done it in 300. They looked at technology they did not understand, took it apart, and figured out how it worked. They asked questions that even Council scientists could not answer. They looked at the impossible and said, "Let us try anyway." High Counselor Marith Prim called a special meeting. For 40 days, the Council debated what to do about humanity. Some said humans should be welcomed as allies. Others said they should be watched carefully, but most of the Council was afraid. "They breed too quickly," said one counselor. "Their population doubles every few decades." "They are too emotional," said another. "They cannot be trusted to act rationally." "They learn too fast," said a third. "In 1,000 years, they could surpass us all." Marith Prime listened to all of this. She was old and tired, and she wanted simple solutions to complicated problems. On the 41st day, she stood before the Council and announced her decision. "Humanity is too dangerous to be allowed among us. For the safety of all civilized species, they must be contained within their own territory. They will not be harmed, but they will not be allowed to spread. This is the containment protocol." The vote passed easily. Most counselors were relieved. The human problem had been solved. The Council sent a massive fleet to surround human space. They placed automated weapons platforms at every exit point. They told the humans that any ship trying to leave would be destroyed. Trade was forbidden. Communication was forbidden. Humanity was now a prisoner in its own home. Captain Daniel Torres was returning to Earth when the containment protocol began. His ship, the Meridian, was carrying diplomats who had been trying to build friendships with Council species. When they reached the border of human space, they found a wall of warships waiting for them. "Attention, human vessel," came the message. "You will proceed directly to your home system. Any deviation will result in your destruction." Daniel did as he was told. But as his ship moved through the quarantine zone, he saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. 3 civilian transports were trying to flee. They were passenger ships, carrying families who had been visiting Council worlds when the protocol was announced. They were trying to get home. The Council fleet opened fire. Daniel watched as 12,000 people died in seconds. Men, women, children, families who had done nothing wrong except being human. The transports broke apart and burned. No one came to help the survivors because there were no survivors. His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, stood beside him. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "Captain," she whispered. "What do we do?" Daniel wanted to fight. He wanted to turn his ship around and attack the Council fleet until they destroyed him too. But he had 300 crew members depending on him. He had a duty to get them home safely. "We remember," he said quietly. "We go home and we remember." On Earth, President Catherine Walsh addressed the people of humanity. Billions watched as she stood before the cameras, her face calm, but her eyes burning with cold fire. "Today, the Galactic Council has decided that humanity does not deserve to be free. They have murdered our people. They have imprisoned us in our own solar systems. They believe we are too dangerous to exist among the stars." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "They may be right about that, because we will not accept this. We will not sit quietly in our cage. The Council has made a choice today. They have made an enemy of humanity. And one day, they will understand what a terrible mistake that was. Beside her stood Admiral Gregory Palmer, the new commander of Earth's military forces. He had already begun making plans. Not for immediate war, because humanity was not ready for that, but for something else. Something that would take time. In secret meetings across human space, leaders gathered to discuss the future. They could not fight the Council now. The Council had better ships, better weapons, and more soldiers than humanity could count. A direct attack would be suicide. But humans were patient when they needed to be, and they were very, very good at learning. "We will build in secret," Admiral Palmer told the gathered leaders. "We will develop new technologies. We will create weapons the Council has never seen. We will train soldiers who can fight like no one else in the galaxy. And when we are ready, when the time is right, we will show them what humanity can do." President Walsh nodded. "How long will this take? 50 years. Maybe more. But we will be ready." Some of the leaders were worried. 50 years was a long time. People would grow old and die. Children would be born who had never known freedom. Could humanity really maintain this secret for so long? Admiral Palmer understood their concerns. "The Council thinks we are weak. They think we will fight among ourselves, that we will fall apart without contact with the rest of the galaxy. They are wrong. They have given us something we never had before." "What is that?" asked President Walsh. Unity, Palmer replied. "Every human, on every world, now has the same enemy, the same goal, the same dream. They wanted to contain us. They have created something far more dangerous. They have given us a reason to become everything they feared." Across human space, the work began. Scientists started research programs in hidden laboratories. Engineers designed new ships in underground factories. Soldiers trained in secret facilities on distant moons, and everywhere, people remembered the 12,000 who had died. The Council thought they had solved the human problem. They had only made it worse. 50 years passed inside the cage. The Council watched humanity through their sensor networks and felt very pleased with themselves. The humans seemed to be doing exactly what was expected. They fought small wars among themselves. Their population grew slowly. Their ships looked old and outdated. Their technology appeared to be stuck in place, making no progress at all. High Counselor Vareth Knox, who had taken power after Mirth Prime died, gave a speech to the Council chamber on the 50th anniversary of the Containment Protocol. "The human problem is solved," he announced proudly. "They are contained. They are stagnant. They pose no threat to galactic civilization. Our projections show that they will slowly decline and become irrelevant within 3 or 4 centuries. The wisdom of the Containment Protocol has been proven correct."
Ow.
The counselors applauded. They had been right to fear humanity, and they had been right to lock them away. Everything was going according to plan. Counselor Tereth, of the Kathrani people, was not so sure. His sensors had detected strange energy readings from inside human space. Nothing definite, nothing clear, but something unusual was happening in there. "Perhaps we should investigate," he suggested. "Send a probe to confirm that humans are truly stagnant." Vareth Knox waved away his concerns. Background radiation from their primitive reactors? Nothing more. The quarantine is absolute. They cannot threaten us. But Tereth was a careful person. He filed a request to send a reconnaissance probe into human space. It was approved without much discussion. After all, what could the primitive humans possibly be hiding? Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a facility that did not exist on any official map. Director Samuel Green reviewed the latest reports. The Prometheus initiative had been running for 50 years now, and it was almost complete. "Quantum communication network is fully active," reported Dr. Linda Vasquez. "Every human system is connected. We can talk to each other instantly across any distance, and the Council cannot detect our signals. We have been coordinating in secret for 30 years. Chief Engineer Peter Kim gave his update next. "The new drive systems are ready for production. We have moved beyond warp technology. Our fold space engines can take a ship anywhere in the galaxy in seconds. The Council has nothing like it. Samuel Green nodded slowly. He was an old man now. He had been young when the containment protocol began, and he had spent his entire adult life working toward this moment. What about weapons? He asked Dr. Marcus Webb, a quiet man who had spent decades studying wreckage from Council ships. Brought up a holographic display. It showed a warship unlike anything humanity had ever built before. The Nemesis-class battlecruiser, he said. Its hull changes shape to deflect INCOM. fire. Its targeting systems are linked to quantum computers that can track thousands of targets at once. And its main weapon, the Cascade Cannon, can break apart the molecules of any known material. How many do we have? 347 completed. Another 600 being built. By the end of the year, we will have over 1,000. Green smiled for the first time in years. And the Council thinks we have a handful of patrol boats. Across human space, the secret military had been growing for decades. Admiral Grace Chen commanded the real United Earth Navy from a hidden base in the asteroid belt. On paper, humanity had perhaps 50 outdated ships. In reality, Admiral Chen controlled over 8,000 warships. Hidden in asteroid fields, concealed in the atmospheres of gas giants, and disguised as mining platforms, the civilian population knew nothing about any of this. Children grew up believing they would live and die inside the quarantine zone. Their parents pretended to accept their fate, but the leaders of humanity had never stopped planning. They had never stopped building, and they had never forgotten. A young Valari historian named Sarathfen became curious about humans. She requested access to the original files from the first contact mission, the reports that had been used to justify the containment protocol. What she found troubled her deeply. The survey teams had noted many things about humans. Yes, they were emotional and unpredictable, but they were also creative and adaptable. They worked together under pressure. They learned from their mistakes faster than any species the Council had ever countered. One report had been buried and classified. It was written by the commander of the original survey mission, and it contained a warning that the Council had ignored. These beings should not be underestimated. Their short lives seem to drive them rather than limit them. They accomplish in decades what other species need centuries to achieve. I recommend full integration and close alliance. Containment will not work. It will only give them motivation. Sarathfen brought her findings to Counselor Tereth. He listened carefully, his large eyes blinking with concern. The containment protocol may have been a mistake, she said. We gave humanity 70 years of motivation and no reason to trust us. If they have been developing in secret, if they have been building while we watched, ... Tereth shook his head. Our sensors show nothing. You are worrying about old reports and speculation. Then send the probe, she urged. A single reconnaissance drone. Verify that they have truly stagnated. Tereth had already approved the probe mission. It would launch soon. The drone entered human space with its stealth systems fully active. It passed the outer defense platforms without any problems and began scanning the inner systems. Everything looked exactly as the Council expected. Primitive ships. Old technology. A civilization going nowhere. On Titan, one of the moons of Saturn, Lieutenant Commander Kevin Price was monitoring the early warning network. He noticed a tiny flicker in the sensors, so small that most people would have missed it. Contact detected, he reported calmly. Council reconnaissance drone. Stealth configuration. Admiral Chen received the report instantly through the quantum network. She had prepared for this exact situation for 20 years. Let it see what we want it to see, she ordered. Then destroy it before it can transmit. The probe completed its scan and prepared to send its data back to the Council. It had found exactly what the Council expected. A primitive civilization with no military power and no advanced technology. The transmission never left human space. A single missile. Launched from a platform that the probe had not detected. Intercepted it and destroyed it completely. To the Council's monitoring stations, it looked like the probe had simply stopped working due to a technical problem. Counselor Tereth read the report of the probe's loss with mild disappointment. Technical failure, he noted in his log. These things happen. At least we confirmed there is nothing to worry about. Sorthven was not convinced. She continued her research into human history and psychology. She read about their wars and their art. She studied their music and their literature. She learned about their capacity for both terrible violence and incredible kindness. The more she learned, the more worried she became. They are not stagnating, she wrote in her personal journal. They are waiting. And when they stop waiting, the galaxy will never be the same. No one on the council listened to the young historian with her uncomfortable questions. Humanity continued to build. Humanity continued to train. Humanity continued to remember, and the clock continued to tick. 73. Years after the containment protocol began, something terrible came from the darkness between galaxies. The Draxian Collective was a machine intelligence, a vast network of artificial minds that had slept for 10,000 years in the outer rim of the galaxy. No one knew what had awakened them. No one knew why they had started moving. But when they did, they brought death with them. The Draxians did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They simply arrived at a world, stripped it of all resources, converted the population into raw materials, and moved on to the next target. They were machines without mercy, without feeling, without any purpose except expansion. The Valari homeworld fell in 3 weeks. 8 billion people died. The survivors fled on whatever ships they could find, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and memories of everything they had lost. The Kathrani tried to fight. Their fleet was one of the largest in council space. The Draxians destroyed it in 4 days and then consumed their colonies one by one. Only a handful of refugee ships escaped. Species after species fell. The Morvax, the Threll, the Vortani. Worlds that had been part of council space for thousands of years were now dead rocks, stripped bare by the collective's hunger. High Counselor Berethnox called an emergency meeting of whatever remained of the council. They gathered on a hidden station far from the front lines, watching tactical displays that showed the Draxian advance in terrible detail. Cannot stop them, admitted Fleet Commander Horthven. He was the grandson of Saruthven, the historian who had warned about humanity decades ago. He had grown up hearing his grandmother's theories. Now, watching his civilization burn, he wondered if she had been right about more than just humans. Our combined forces are not enough, he continued. We have tried every weapon we have. The Draxians adapt too quickly. They learn our tactics and counter them before we can adjust. At our current rate of loss, the Council will cease to exist within 2 months. Berethnox slammed his hand on the table. Then we must find allies. What about the quarantine species? The Threll? The Vortani? The Threll were destroyed last month, Horthven said quietly. The Vortani have fled beyond the edge of the galaxy. They are not coming back. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what option remained unspoken. Everyone was afraid to say it. Finally, a young counselor spoke up. What about the humans? Berethnox's face twisted with disgust. We contain them for good reason. They are unpredictable, dangerous, primitive. They cannot help us. They are the only species the Draxians have not encountered, Horthven pointed out. And they have had 73 years to develop without our interference. We do not actually know what they are capable of anymore. They are primitives in a cage, Berethnox insisted. They will be useless. Counselor Merithven, who represented what was left of the Valari people, spoke carefully. My great-grandmother served on the original contact team. Her private journals suggested that humanity was far more capable than we acknowledged. She believed the containment protocol was a mistake. Before the argument could continue, an alarm filled the chamber. Another Draxian fleet had been detected. It was heading directly toward their current location. They had perhaps 3 days before it arrived. Berethnox closed his eyes. He had spent his entire career believing that the containment protocol was the right decision. Now, facing extinction, he had to consider the possibility that everything he believed was wrong. Send a diplomatic vessel to the humans, he finally said. Beg if you must. Offer them whatever they want. But find out if they can help us. The diplomatic ship Serenity of Stars approached the quarantine zone slowly. All weapons were powered down. Distress beacons were active. Ambassador Korthfell, young Valari chosen specifically because his family had no connection to the original containment decision, transmitted the universal greeting. Attention human vessels. This is Ambassador Korthfell of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking dialogue. The galaxy faces a threat that endangers all sentient life. We request an audience with your leadership. For several minutes, there was no response. The ambassador waited, his heart's beating faster with each passing second. Then space itself seemed to shimmer, and a ship appeared from nowhere. It was enormous, larger than any vessel Korthfell had ever seen. Its hull was covered with technology that his computers could not identify or understand. This is Admiral Grace Chen of the United Earth Navy. The voice was old but strong, carrying the weight of decades of preparation. I remember you, Ambassador. Or rather, I remember your predecessors. I was 22 years old when your council murdered 12,000 of my people and locked the rest of us in a cage. Korthfell felt a chill run through his body. Admiral Ionder, stand your anger. But please, the Draxian Collective threatens all organic life. Billions have already died. We are desperate. I know about the Draxians, Chen replied. We have been watching them for months. We know their fleet compositions, their tactics, their weaknesses. The ambassador was stunned. How? Our own intelligence services have struggled to gather such information, because we are unpredictable. We do things that do not make sense by your logic. We hide scouts in debris fields. We disguise probes as asteroids. The Draxians cannot predict us because you could never predict us either. More ships began appearing around the Serenity of Stars. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They emerged from asteroids, from the shadows of moons, from places where sensors said nothing existed. On the council station, the surviving leaders watched in growing horror. They could see the human fleet now. It filled their screens. Admiral Chen continued her transmission. 73 years ago, your council decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist among the stars. You were afraid of what we might become if you gave us the chance to grow. A view screen activated. Showing an elderly woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, you were right to be afraid. Vareth Nox stared at the display, counting ships. 8,000 warships. 12,000 support vessels. More military power than the Council had possessed at its height. This is impossible, he whispered. Our sensors showed nothing. Our probes detected no development. Korthfell understood now. His grandmother had tried to warn them. Humanity had not been stagnating inside their cage. They had been preparing, building, waiting, and now the cage was open. Admiral Chen's voice filled the council chamber. You imprisoned us for 73 years. You killed 12,000 of our people. You treated us like animals too dangerous to be free. Now you come begging for our help. Tell me, counselor, why should we give it to you? No one in the chamber had an answer. The council delegation arrived on Earth 3 days later. Their ship was small and old, surrounded by a squadron of human battlecruisers that made it look like a toy. Ambassador Korthfell tried to hide his shock at what he saw through the viewports. Earth's orbital space was filled with activity. Massive shipyards built vessels larger than anything the Council had ever created. Defense platforms bristled with weapons that Korthfell's computers could not even identify. Thousands of ships moved in perfect coordination, guided by systems far more advanced than anything he had seen before. The planet below looked nothing like the primitive backwater the Council had expected to find. Cities gleamed with technology. Transportation networks moved millions of people smoothly across continents. The humans had not just survived inside their cage, they had thrived. Everything the Council believed about humanity was wrong. President Nathan Cruz received the delegation in the rebuilt United Nations Hall in Geneva. He was a tall man in his 60s, his face weathered by years of burden, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He did not smile. He did not offer pleasantries. You are here because you need us, he said. Let us not pretend otherwise. Korthfell bowed his head. You are correct, President Cruz. The Draxian Collective threatens all organic life. We have lost our homeworlds. We have lost most of our fleets. We are dying. We are asking for your help. Cruz stood and walked to the window. Outside, human ships passed overhead, their hulls catching the sunlight. 73 years. That is how long your council left us in that cage. 3 generations of humans grew up believing they would never see the stars beyond our little corner of space. Children were born, lived their entire lives, and died without ever knowing freedom. He turned back to face the ambassador. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what you took from us? I cannot undo what was done, Korthvel said carefully. I can only ask for your mercy now. Cruz laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mercy, your council showed us no mercy when they killed 12,000 civilians, when they built a wall of weapons around our homes, when they left us to rot. Admiral Grace Chen entered the room with a tactical display floating beside her. She was old now, her hair completely gray, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. We have been watching the Draxians since they first appeared, she said. We know everything about them. Their fleet compositions, their attack patterns, their weaknesses. She activated the display, showing the current state of the war. The Council's remaining forces were a small cluster of dots. The Draxian armada was a spreading stain across the map. Without us, you will be extinct within a month, Chen continued. The Draxians will consume what remains of your civilization and then move on to the next galaxy. Everything you've built in 12,000 years will be erased. Korthvel felt his hope fading. Then you will not help us. I did not say that, Chen replied. She activated another layer of the display. Human forces appeared. They filled the entire screen. 8,000 warships of the line, 12,000 support vessels, 47 million trained soldiers, weapons that the Council had never imagined. We can save you, President Cruz said. We have the power to push the Draxians back. We might even be able to destroy them completely. Hope flickered in the ambassador's eyes. Then please, help us. We will give you anything. Yes, Cruz said coldly. You will. The negotiations lasted for 18 hours. Vice President Diana Ortiz led the human team. She was a small woman with a quiet voice, but she negotiated without mercy. The Council representatives quickly realized that they had no leverage at all. Humanity held all the power and everyone knew it. The containment protocol ends today, Ortiz said. Permanently. All your defense platforms will be deactivated and removed. Agreed, Korthvel said immediately. Full payment to the families of those killed during the containment. A formal public apology from your council broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Agreed. Equal representation in all galactic governance. No decisions affecting human interests without human consent. Ever again, Korthvel hesitated. This was not just an alliance. This was a complete restructuring of power in the galaxy. The Council may resist such terms. Council is dying, Ortiz interrupted. Without us, you will not exist in a month. These are not negotiations, Ambassador. These are terms. You will accept them, or you will face the Draxians alone. There was a long silence. Then Korthvel nodded slowly. We accept. 3 days later, the combined fleet launched. Admiral Chen commanded from the bridge of the Constellation, humanity's first true flagship. It was a massive vessel, larger than most space stations. Equipped with weapons that could shatter moons. Our vessels? This is Admiral Chen. Her voice was broadcast to every ship in the fleet, human and council alike. For 73 years, we have waited for this moment. Not for revenge, although we have earned the right to it. We waited for the chance to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we are not locked in a cage. She looked at the tactical display. The Draxian fleet waited at the edge of council space. A massive swarm of machine ships ready to consume everything in their path. We are not just fighting for ourselves today. We are fighting for every species the Draxians have destroyed, for every world they have consumed. And yes, we are fighting for the council that imprisoned us. Because that is who we are. Lieutenant Commander Kevin Park, her tactical officer, reported. All ships ready, Admiral. Chen nodded. Then let us show them what a mistake looks like. The Battle of Covenant Station lasted 9 hours. The Draxian Collective had conquered dozens of species. Their adaptive algorithms were designed to counter logical enemies who followed predictable tactics. They had never encountered anything like humanity. Human ships attacked from impossible angles. Squadrons sacrificed themselves to create openings that should not have existed. Pilots pushed their vessels beyond design limits, performing maneuvers that should have killed them. The Draxians tried to adapt, but humans changed tactics faster than the machines could learn. The Cascade cannons tore through Draxian hulls like paper. Human missiles evolved faster than Draxian countermeasures could adjust. Boarding parties led by Commander Victor Reyes captured enemy vessels and turned their own systems against them. The machines tried to retreat. Human ships followed them, destroying their escape routes, hunting them through the debris of the battle. For the first time in their existence, the Draxians experienced something their programming had never accounted for. They experienced losing by the end. The 9th hour, the Draxian armada was shattered. Broken machine ships drifted through space, their collective intelligence fragmented and confused. The survivors scattered into the void, fleeing in every direction. Admiral Chen watched them go. She was tired. She was old. She had waited her entire life for this moment. All ships, this is the Admiral. The battle is won. The Draxian threat is broken. Across the fleet, human and council crews alike erupted in celebration. They had faced extinction and survived. They had fought the machines and won. Humanity had proven everything the council feared about them, and they were just getting started. The reconstruction of the galaxy took decades. The Draxian Collective was not completely destroyed, but they were broken. Scattered groups of machines still lurked in the outer rim, but they no longer threatened civilized space. Humanity hunted them patiently, destroying every remnant they could find, making sure the nightmare would never return. The Council species slowly rebuilt their worlds. The Valeri established new colonies on planets that reminded them of their lost homeworld. The Kathrani gathered their scattered refugees and began again. Other species, reduced to handfuls of survivors, were given sanctuary on human worlds until they could find new homes. Many in the galaxy expected humanity to take revenge. They had the military power to crush the Council completely. They had the moral authority that came from saving civilization when no one else could. Every species waited nervously, wondering when the humans would demand payment for 73 years of imprisonment. What happened instead surprised everyone. President Samuel Webb, grandson of the weapons designer who had helped create humanity's arsenal, addressed the first meeting of the new Galactic Assembly. Every surviving species had sent representatives. They gathered in a great hall on Earth, the planet that the Council had once tried to cage. 123 years ago. Webb began, your predecessors decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist freely among the stars. They looked at us and saw chaos. They saw passion and unpredictability and a stubborn refusal to accept limitations. They were frightened of what we might become. Paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. They were not wrong to see those qualities in us. Yes, we are passionate. We love with all our hearts and fight with all our strength. Yes, we are unpredictable. We find solutions where others see only problems. Yes, we refuse to accept limitations. We believe that every challenge can be overcome. Every barrier can be broken. Webb stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. But your predecessors were wrong about what those qualities meant. They saw danger where they should have seen potential. They saw threats where they should have seen allies. And in their fear, they made an enemy of the species that could have been their greatest friend. The chamber was silent. Every delegate waited to hear what would come next. Humanity could rule this galaxy, Webb continued. We have the power. We have earned the right. Some would say we are owed that, after everything that was done to us. He shook his head slowly. But that is not who we are. We did not spend 73 years building ships and weapons because we wanted to conquer. We built them because we wanted to be free. And now that we are free, we have a choice about what kind of people we want to be. He gestured to the hall around them. This is the Galactic Assembly, not a council where some species make decisions for others. An assembly where every voice matters. Every species has equal representation. Every world has equal rights. This is what humanity fought for. Not power. Not revenge. Equality. Ambassador Sorthven, now old and frail but still sharp of mind, listened with tears in her eyes. She had spent her entire life studying humans, trying to understand them. Now, at the end of her days, she finally did. After the ceremony, she found Admiral Grace Chen sitting alone in a garden outside the assembly hall. Chen had retired from military service years ago. She spent her time now teaching young officers at the Interspecies Military Academy, passing on everything she had learned. You could have ruled us all, Sorafin said, sitting beside her. No one would have stopped you. Chen smiled, the expression softening her weathered face. That is not who we are. Your council imprisoned us because they feared what we might become. We had every reason to prove them right. To become the monsters they imagined us to be. She shook her head slowly. Instead, we chose to become something better. Not because we are saints. We are definitely not that. But because the galaxy needs hope more than it needs another empire, across human and former council space, the integration continued. Human engineers worked alongside Valari scientists. Human merchants traded with Kathrani craftspeople. Human teachers shared their history with young minds of every species, telling them the story of how hatred and fear had almost destroyed everything, and how courage and forgiveness had saved it. The story of the containment protocol became a lesson taught in schools throughout the galaxy. Children learned how fear and prejudice had nearly cost civilization its greatest ally. They learned how a species written off as too dangerous to exist had become its salvation. They learned that the qualities that seem frightening in others are often the same qualities that make them valuable friends. On Earth, a memorial stood in Geneva, near the old United Nations building. It was a simple stone pillar, not particularly tall or impressive. But carved into its surface were 12,000 names, one for every person who had died when the quarantine was first enforced. Visitors came from every corner of the galaxy to pay their respects. Velari and Kathroni and members of dozens of other species stood before the memorial and remembered what their ancestors had done. They left flowers and tokens and promises that such things would never happen again. The inscription on the memorial was simple. They feared what we might become. We became what they needed. Captain Alina Torres, great-granddaughter of Daniel Torres, who had witnessed the first massacre, visited the memorial on the anniversary of humanity's liberation. She laid flowers at the base and stood in silence for a long time. Her great-grandfather had lived long enough to see the cages come down. He had watched the first human ships fly freely through what had once been the quarantine zone. He had cried that day, she was told. The only time anyone had ever seen him cry. We never forgot, Alina whispered to the memorial. We never gave up, and we never became what they expected us to be. She looked up at the sky, where ships from a dozen species passed overhead. Human children played with alien children in the parks. Scientists of every race worked together in the laboratories. The galaxy that had once tried to cage humanity was now their home, shared freely with everyone. We became something better. The Galactic Council's greatest mistake was not just losing humanity. It was failing to understand that the very qualities they feared were exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. The passion, the unpredictability, the stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. They had tried to contain the chaos. Instead, they had created something extraordinary, and the galaxy would never be the same. Far out in the void, on the edge of explored space, a human exploration ship made contact with a new species. They were strange creatures, afraid and suspicious. Pointing primitive weapons at the landing party, Captain Alina Torres stepped forward with her hands raised in peace. We are humanity, she said. We come as friends. We would like to learn about you, if you will let us. The aliens hesitated, uncertain. Alina smiled. We were afraid once, too. Someone taught us that we did not have to be. Let us teach you the same thing. And somewhere, across the galaxy, the memorial in Geneva stood silent and proud, reminding everyone of the price of fear and the power of hope. The universe was vast and full of wonders. Humanity was ready to explore them all.